Tonight on Gilded Hearts, we bring you a story that will shatter everything you believe about love and loyalty. What happens when a marriage built on lies becomes the most honest thing in a billionaire's life? What happens when a contract meant to protect a heart becomes the weapon that destroys it? This is the story of Adrian Knight, a man who swore he'd never love again, and Elena Hart, the woman who proved that sometimes the most beautiful lies can become the most devastating truths. Picture this. Manhattan's glittering skyline stretches endlessly into the night, each light representing dreams, ambitions, and secrets that pulse through the city's veins like liquid gold. Behind those towering glass facades live people whose lives are anything but ordinary, people whose choices ripple through boardrooms and bedrooms alike, changing destinies with the stroke of a pen or the whisper of a promise. Before we dive into this emotional roller coaster, tell us in the comments, where are you watching from tonight? We love connecting with our global family of dreamers and believers. Whether you're curled up in London, sipping coffee in Tokyo, or stealing a quiet moment in Sao Paulo, you're part of our story now. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because you won't want to miss a single moment of the journeys we share. And if this story touches your heart, please like and share this video. Together, we can reach more beautiful minds like yours who understand that love is worth fighting for. But tonight isn't just about love. It's about the price we pay for protection, the masks we wear to survive, and the moments when those masks slip away to reveal the raw, beating heart beneath. It's about two souls who thought they understood the rules of their world, only to discover that the heart plays by no rules at all. Adrian Knight stands 60 floors above the city that made him, his reflection ghost-like in the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office. At 34, he commands an empire worth $12 billion, yet the man looking back at him in the glass seems hollow, carved from marble and just as cold. His dark hair is perfectly styled, his Armani suit immaculate, but his eyes, those deep gray eyes that once sparkled with dreams, now hold the weight of betrayals that cut deeper than any business deal gone wrong. 3 years ago, Adrian learned the cruelest lesson life could teach, that love makes you vulnerable, and vulnerability is a luxury billionaires cannot afford. The woman who taught him that lesson left him with more than just a broken heart. She left him with a fortress around his soul and a promise to himself that he would never again confuse desire with love, passion with permanence. But across town, in a modest Brooklyn apartment where the walls are thin and the dreams are big, Elena Hart is about to challenge everything Adrian thought he knew about himself. 28 years old with eyes like emeralds and a spirit that refuses to break despite life's relentless attempts to crush it, Elena has spent the last 5 years fighting battles that would have destroyed lesser souls. Her mother lies in Mount Sinai Hospital, machines keeping her alive while medical bills pile up like autumn leaves, beautiful in their abundance, devastating in their reality. Elena has already sold everything she owns of value, worked 3 jobs simultaneously, and exhausted every avenue of help she can think of. The experimental treatment her mother needs costs more than Elena could earn in 10 lifetimes, yet she continues to fight, continues to hope, continues to love with the fierce determination of someone who knows that giving up isn't an option. It's desperation that brings them together, desperation wrapped in designer clothes and disguised as opportunity. Adrian needs a wife, not for love, but for legitimacy. His latest acquisition, a family-owned media conglomerate worth $3 billion, comes with strings attached by its old-fashioned board of directors. They want stability, tradition, the kind of respectability that only comes with a ring on a finger and a woman by his side at charity galas and board meetings. Elena needs a miracle, and Adrian Knight, with his checkbook and his connections, might just be that miracle wrapped in an Armani suit and tied with a legal contract. Their first meeting happens in the most unlikely of places, not in a boardroom or at some exclusive Manhattan event, but in the sterile waiting room of Mount Sinai's ICU, where Elena sits beside her mother's bedside, reading aloud from a worn copy of Jane Eyre, because the doctors say that familiar voices can sometimes reach through the darkness of a medically induced coma. Adrian arrives at the hospital not for Elena, but for his lawyer's father, who suffered a heart attack during a tense negotiation session. It's pure coincidence that places him in that waiting room at 2 in the morning, watching a young woman with tears streaming down her face as she whispers words of hope to someone who cannot hear them. She always loved this part, Elena murmurs to the sleeping figure in the hospital bed, her voice barely audible above the steady beep of monitors. Where Jane realizes that love isn't about finding someone perfect, but about finding someone whose imperfections fit perfectly with your own. Adrian stops walking. Something in Elena's voice, the gentle strength, the unwavering devotion, cuts through the armor he's built around his heart like a blade through silk. For the first time in 3 years, he finds himself genuinely curious about another human being. He could walk away. He should walk away. But instead, Adrian Knight, master of billion-dollar empires and destroyer of corporate dynasties, finds himself sitting in an uncomfortable plastic chair beside a woman he's never met, listening to her read about a love so pure it transcends social boundaries and financial status. Is she going to be okay? He asks quietly, and Elena looks up with surprise, not just at the question, but at the genuine concern in his voice. I don't know, she admits, and there's something so honest in that admission, so refreshingly real after years of people telling him only what they think he wants to hear, that Adrian feels a crack form in the walls he's built around himself. They talk until dawn creeps across the city's skyline, sharing stories that neither of them intended to tell. Elena learns that beneath the billionaire's facade lives a man who still remembers what it feels like to lose everything that matters. Adrian discovers that true strength isn't measured in stock prices and corporate victories, but in the quiet courage of someone who refuses to give up on love, even when love has given up on her. By the time the sun rises over Manhattan, painting the hospital windows gold, Adrian has made a decision that will change both of their lives forever. He doesn't offer charity. Elena's pride would never accept that. Instead, he offers something far more dangerous, a partnership disguised as a marriage, a business arrangement that looks suspiciously like a fairy tale, and a contract that promises to protect both of their hearts while secretly plotting to destroy every defense they've ever built. I have a proposition for you, Adrian says as they stand in the hospital corridor, both of them exhausted but somehow more awake than they've been in years. It might sound crazy, but I think we could help each other. Elena looks at this man in his expensive suit who spent the night listening to her read Charlotte Bronte in a hospital waiting room, and she knows that whatever he's about to offer will either save her or ruin her completely. The question is, in her desperate situation, does she really have a choice? But this story isn't just about the moment when two strangers decide to bind their lives together with legal documents and false promises. It's about what happens when the lines between performance and reality begin to blur, when a marriage that starts as a transaction slowly transforms into something neither of them expected, and when the very contract meant to keep them emotionally safe becomes the thing that makes them more vulnerable than they've ever been. Because love, real love, doesn't read contracts. It doesn't respect boundaries. And it certainly doesn't care about the carefully constructed walls that billionaires build around their hearts. As Elena looks into Adrian's gray eyes and sees something that might be hope, as Adrian watches this remarkable woman consider an offer that could change everything, neither of them realizes they're about to embark on a journey that will test every assumption they've made about love, trust, and the price of protecting your heart. The city continues to pulse around them, indifferent to the moment when two lives intersect in a hospital corridor, indifferent to the contract that will be signed in mahogany boardrooms and the vows that will be spoken in marble-columned churches. But the city has no idea what it's about to witness. The slow, inevitable destruction of every wall these two people have built, the beautiful catastrophe of hearts that were never supposed to fall in love, and the truth that sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is trust someone with your carefully guarded soul. This is where our story truly begins, not with declarations of love, but with a handshake in a hospital corridor and two people who think they understand exactly what they're agreeing to. They have no idea that they're about to discover the difference between loving someone and being in love with them, between choosing someone with your head and choosing them with your heart, and between a marriage that exists on paper and a marriage that lives in the space between heartbeats, in stolen glances across crowded rooms, and in the terrifying moment when pretending becomes the most honest thing you've ever done. The question that will haunt them both is simple: when does a lie become the truth, and what happens when the truth becomes too dangerous to speak? 90 floors above Manhattan's bustling streets, in a boardroom where crystal chandeliers worth more than most people's homes cast dancing shadows across black marble, Adrian Knight stands like a king surveying his empire. At 32, he possesses everything a man could want: skyscrapers that pierce the clouds, companies that employ hundreds of thousands, and influence that reaches into every corner of power. His 6'2" frame fills his $8,000 Tom Ford suit perfectly, and his storm cloud gray eyes have made grown men weep during negotiations. Yet in this moment, surrounded by the trappings of his vast empire, Adrian feels more alone than the homeless man sleeping in the shadow of his building 60 floors below. The mahogany conference table stretches before him like a battlefield, and today, his own board members have become the enemy. Charts and graphs scatter across its polished surface, each one telling the same damning story: declining stock prices, headlines questioning his stability, and the slow erosion of investor confidence in Knight Global Enterprises. Board Chairman Harrison, a nervous man in his 60s whose hands shake slightly as he shuffles through papers, finally breaks the oppressive silence. "Adrian, the shareholders are getting restless. Your personal life is becoming a liability. The Blackstone merger fell through because their CEO questioned your stability." Adrian's voice cuts through the air like winter wind. "My personal life is none of their business." Harrison swallows hard, his Adam's apple bobbing with fear and determination. "It is when it affects our bottom line. We need stability. We need—" "What, Harrison?" Adrian's interruption is sharp, final. "What do we need?" The pause that follows is suffocating. Every person in that room knows they're about to cross a line that cannot be uncrossed. Harrison's next words will either save the company or destroy the man who built it. "A wife, Adrian. You need a wife." The silence that follows is so complete it seems to swallow sound itself. Then Adrian laughs, a sharp, bitter sound that echoes off the marble walls like breaking glass. It's a laugh devoid of humor, filled instead with the kind of pain that comes from wounds that never properly healed. "A wife? You want me to marry for stock prices?" Harrison's voice grows stronger, desperate. "The shareholders want to see commitment, responsibility, a settled family man who—" But Adrian is no longer listening. Instead, his mind travels back 24 years, to a memory that still cuts like a blade through his carefully constructed armor. He was 8 years old, standing at the top of the grand staircase in the Knight family mansion, watching his mother pack a single suitcase while his father pleaded from the doorway. "Love," she had told his father, her voice as cold as January rain, "is a luxury I can no longer afford." She walked out that door with nothing but her suitcase and a goodbye so final it might as well have been carved in stone. The empire his father had built, brick by brick, deal by deal, crumbled within 2 years. Heartbreak, Adrian learned, was more destructive than any economic crash. That night, 8-year-old Adrian made a promise to himself that would shape the next 24 years of his life. He would never make the same mistake his father did. He would never confuse desire with love, passion with permanence. He would never allow his heart to become a liability that could destroy everything he worked to build. Returning to the present, Adrian looks at each board member in turn, seeing the fear in their eyes, the desperation in their postures. These men have families to feed, mortgages to pay, children whose college funds depend on Knight Global's continued success. They're not his enemies. They're casualties of a war between his heart and his empire. "Fine," he says, his voice carrying the weight of inevitability. "But it will be on my terms. My conditions. My contract." Miles away, in a world that might as well exist on another planet, Elena Hart sits alone in a fluorescent-lit classroom at Brooklyn Community College. The evening custodial staff has long since finished their rounds, leaving her in the kind of silence that amplifies every worry, every fear, every desperate thought that keeps her awake at night. At 24, Elena possesses a beauty that no amount of worry can diminish. She's petite at 5'4", with warm brown eyes that hold galaxies of concern and dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. Her clothes are clean but worn, a Target blouse that's been washed so many times it's soft as silk, discount jeans, and shoes that have walked too many miles on unforgiving pavement. But beneath the exhaustion and the weight of responsibility, there's something luminous about Elena Hart, something that speaks of a soul too rich to be measured in dollars and cents. She grades papers with hands that tremble not from cold, but from the bone-deep exhaustion that comes from working 18-hour days for months on end. Each red mark she makes represents not just a student's mistake, but another few cents earned toward the mountain of medical bills that threatens to bury her family alive. Her phone buzzes against the desk, startling her from her concentrated silence. The display shows 7 missed calls from Children's Hospital, each one representing a conversation she's been dreading. With shaking fingers, she dials the number she knows by heart. "This is Elena Hart," she says, her voice barely above a whisper. "You called about my sister?" The voice on the other end belongs to Dr. Matthews, a kind man whose job requires him to deliver devastating news with clinical detachment. "Ms. Hart, Sophie needs the surgery immediately. Without it, I'm sorry, but her condition will worsen rapidly. We need payment confirmation by tomorrow, or we'll have to explore other options." Elena's heart stops beating for what feels like an eternity. Other options. She knows what that means. Other options mean watching her 16-year-old sister slowly fade away while they sit in waiting rooms, filling out forms for treatments they can't afford. How much? The words scrape past her throat like broken glass. $200,000. The phone slips from Elena's nerveless fingers, clattering onto the desk with a sound that seems to echo forever. In that empty classroom, surrounded by the ghosts of other people's children and other people's dreams, Elena finally breaks. The sobs that tear from her chest come from a soul that has carried too much weight for far too long. Elena would sell her soul for her sister. She's already sold her future, working every available hour to pay for treatments that barely keep Sophie stable. But souls don't pay medical bills. And futures don't save the only family you have left when your parents died in a car accident 5 years ago, leaving 2 sisters to face the world alone. Her apartment in Brooklyn tells the story of a life lived on the edge of financial disaster. It's sparse but immaculately clean, every surface scrubbed with the kind of desperate pride that refuses to let poverty become squalor. Photographs of Elena and Sophie cover every available space. Birthday parties celebrated with homemade cakes, Christmas mornings with gifts wrapped in newspaper comics, beach trips taken on city buses to free public beaches. Sophie sleeps peacefully in the bedroom they share, unaware that her big sister sits at their tiny kitchen table, laptop open to job postings she can't qualify for and loan applications that have been denied so many times the rejection letters could paper their walls. At 16, Sophie still believes in miracles, still trusts that Elena can fix anything, solve any problem, make any impossible situation right again. "There has to be something," Elena whispers to the empty apartment. "There has to be a way." 3 floors down, Mrs. Chen's television plays too loudly, and through the thin walls, Elena can hear the laugh track of some late-night sitcom. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wails through the Brooklyn night. Life continues around her, indifferent to the quiet desperation of one young woman who has run out of options and is running out of time. The knock on her door at 9:30 p.m. is so unexpected that Elena initially thinks she's imagined it. But the second knock is firm, professional, and entirely real. Through the peephole, she sees a man in an expensive suit, the kind of suit that doesn't belong in her neighborhood, on her street, or anywhere within a 10-mile radius of her life. James Morrison, Adrian Knight's personal attorney, stands in the hallway like an emissary from another world. At 50-something, he's sharp as a razor blade but not without compassion. His silver hair is perfectly styled, his shoes probably cost more than Elena's monthly rent, and his presence transforms the shabby hallway into something almost elegant. "Ms. Hart." His voice carries the educated tones of someone accustomed to being listened to, respected, obeyed. "I represent a client who has a unique opportunity for you." Elena stares at this stranger who somehow knows her name, who somehow found her address, who somehow materialized on her doorstep like an answer to prayers she was afraid to voice. In the back of her mind, warning bells sound. Nothing good comes from mysterious visitors in expensive suits. But desperation has a way of silencing caution, and Elena Hart is more desperate than she's ever been in her life. "I think there's been a mistake," she says through the chained door. I don't know anyone who could afford to hire lawyers like you. James smiles, and it's not unkind. Ms. Hart, sometimes the most extraordinary opportunities come from the most unexpected places. May I come in? What I have to discuss will change your life. The next morning finds Elena sitting in an upscale Manhattan cafe that exists in a different universe from her Brooklyn world. The coffee she clutches costs more than she usually spends on groceries in a day, and the contract James slides across the marble table is thicker than most novels. Around them, Manhattan's elites sip artisanal lattes and conduct business deals worth more than small countries' GDP. My client needs a wife for 90 days, James explains with the same casual tone he might use to discuss the weather. Purely contractual. You would attend social functions, live in his penthouse, and maintain the appearance of marriage in all public settings. Elena stares at him as if he's just suggested she sprout wings and fly to the moon. This is a joke, right? People don't actually do things like this. This is something that happens in movies, not real life. James leans forward, his expression serious. Ms. Hart, I've been practicing law for 30 years. I've seen people do extraordinary things for the people they love. Your sister's medical bills would be paid in full immediately. Plus, you would receive $5 million upon successful completion of the contract. The numbers hit Elena like a physical blow. $5 million. Sophie's surgery. A future that extends beyond next week's bills. She stares at the contract as if it might disappear if she blinks too hard. Who is this client? She manages to whisper. Adrian Knight. The name lands between them like a thunderclap. Elena has seen that face on magazine covers and grocery store checkout lines. Always unsmiling, always untouchable, always accompanied by headlines about billion-dollar deals and corporate conquests. Adrian Knight, whose net worth fluctuates by millions daily, who owns half of Manhattan and probably dreams of buying the other half. The Adrian Knight? Knight Global Enterprises Adrian Knight. Elena's voice is barely audible. Why would someone like that want someone like me? James's smile is gentle, understanding. Because sometimes the most powerful people in the world need the one thing money can't buy, authenticity. My client needs a wife who won't be swayed by his wealth, who won't see dollar signs when she looks at him. He needs someone real. The irony isn't lost on Elena. Adrian Knight wants authenticity, and his solution is to buy a fake wife. But $5 million and Sophie's surgery paid in full is more authenticity than Elena can afford to question. There are conditions, James continues, producing another set of documents. You cannot reveal the true nature of the marriage to anyone, not friends, not family, not even your sister. You must be available for all social functions. You must live as his wife in every public aspect. Elena's cheeks burn with embarrassment. And privately? Separate bedrooms. Separate lives. This is business, Ms. Hart. Nothing more. Her phone buzzes with a text from Sophie. The doctors want to talk to us again. I'm scared, Elena. Elena reads the message, and something inside her chest cracks open. Sophie, brave, beautiful Sophie, who never complains about the pain, who smiles through every treatment, who still believes her big sister can fix anything. Elena has been fighting this battle for 5 years, watching her sister's condition slowly worsen while treatment options dwindled and medical bills mounted like storm clouds on the horizon. When would this start? Elena asks, her voice steady despite the earthquake happening inside her chest. Tomorrow. The wedding is in 3 days. 3 days. Elena has 3 days to prepare for a marriage that isn't real, to a man she's never met, in a world she doesn't understand. 3 days to practice being someone she's not, to learn how to lie convincingly to everyone she loves, to transform from Elena Hart, community college teacher, into Mrs. Adrian Knight, billionaire's wife. 3 days to save her sister's life. Manhattan City Hall has witnessed thousands of weddings, but few as surreal as the one taking place in its private ceremony room on a gray Thursday morning. Marble walls rise toward a ceiling painted with cherubs and clouds. American flags stand at attention beside the judge's bench, and the weight of a decision that will change everything settles over the room like morning fog. Elena stands in a simple white dress, the nicest thing she owns, purchased from a department store clearance rack the day before. It fits her perfectly, hugging her small frame in a way that makes her look elegant despite its modest price. Her dark hair is styled in loose waves that frame her face, and she wears the pearl earrings that belong to her mother, her only valuable possession and the something borrowed that tradition requires. She looks beautiful, but more than that, she looks terrified. The door opens, and Adrian Knight enters wearing a charcoal suit that probably costs more than Elena's yearly rent. He moves with the confidence of a man accustomed to being the most powerful person in any room, but when his eyes find Elena's across the marble expanse, something shifts in the air between them. Neither expected the moment their eyes met to feel like the ground shifting beneath their feet. This was supposed to be business, a transaction, a performance, a mutually beneficial arrangement with clear boundaries and defined expectations. But the way Adrian's breath catches when he sees Elena, really sees her, and the way her cheeks flush under his intense gaze, suggests that some things cannot be controlled by contracts or contained by legal documents. Adrian approaches slowly, as if he's approaching a wild creature that might bolt at any sudden movement. Up close, Elena can see that his storm cloud gray eyes hold depths she hadn't expected, not just the cold calculation she's read about in Forbes articles, but something warmer, more human, more vulnerable than his public persona suggests. "You look beautiful," he says quietly, and there's nothing performative about the compliment. It's simply true, offered without expectation of response. Elena's heart pounds so loudly she's certain everyone in the room can hear it. "Thank you. You look expensive." Adrian's mouth quirks upward in what might be the beginning of a smile. "Is that good or bad?" "I haven't decided yet." The officiating judge, a woman in her 60s who has performed more civil ceremonies than she can count, clears her throat. "Shall we begin?" The ceremony is brief, clinical, nothing like the wedding Elena dreamed of as a little girl. There are no flowers except the single white rose Adrian produces from his jacket pocket, a gesture that surprises them both. There are no guests except James Morrison and a court-appointed witness. There is no music except the distant hum of Manhattan traffic through thick windows. "Do you, Adrian Knight, take Elena Hart to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, for better or worse, until death do you part?" Adrian's eyes never leave Elena's face. "I do." The words hang in the air between them, heavy with implications neither fully understands. "Do you, Elena Hart, take Adrian Knight to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold, in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, for better or worse, until death do you part?" Elena's voice is barely audible, but it carries. "I do. You may kiss the bride." The moment stretches like pulled taffy. Adrian steps closer, his hand gently cupping Elena's face, thumb brushing across her cheek in a gesture so tender it takes her breath away. She can smell his cologne, something expensive and woodsy that makes her think of autumn forests and warm fires. "Just for the paperwork," he whispers, so quietly only she can hear. But when their lips meet, the kiss is gentle, lingering, more than performance, less than love, but something that makes them both tremble with its unexpected sweetness. For just a moment, Elena forgets about contracts and medical bills and the fact that this marriage is built on mutual desperation. For just a moment, she's simply a woman kissing her husband on their wedding day. When they break apart, both are breathing unsteadily. The judge beams at them as if she's just witnessed true love instead of a business transaction. James Morrison checks something off in his notebook. The witness stamps the marriage certificate with official finality. And Elena Hart becomes Elena Knight, a woman she doesn't recognize, married to a man she doesn't know, embarking on a journey that will either save her family or destroy everything she thought she understood about herself. The Knight penthouse occupies the entire 95th floor of Manhattan's most exclusive residential tower. Elena steps from the private elevator into a marble foyer that looks like it belongs in a palace, not an apartment. Original Picassos hang on walls painted in shades of cream and gold. Crystal sculptures catch and fracture light into rainbow prisms, and furniture that belongs in museums creates conversation areas for conversations Elena has never been important enough to have. Floor-to-ceiling windows offer a view of Manhattan that makes Elena dizzy. She's never been this high above the city she's lived in her entire life. Central Park spreads below like a green carpet. The Hudson River glitters in the afternoon sun, and tiny yellow taxis navigate streets that look like lines drawn on a child's map. "Your room is down that hall," Adrian says, his voice distant and professional. The man who kissed her so gently an hour ago has disappeared, replaced by the cold CEO whose photograph graces business magazine covers. "The staff will help you with anything you need. We have a charity gala tomorrow night, your first public appearance as my wife." Elena turns to face him, studying this stranger she's just married. "Adrian, Mrs. Knight," he cuts her off sharply. "In public, it's Mrs. Knight." The words hit Elena like a slap. She actually flinches, taking a step backward as if he's physically struck her. For a moment, hurt flashes across her features so clearly that Adrian's expression softens. "Elena," he says, his voice gentler. "This is just easier if we keep boundaries clear. For both of us." Elena straightens, finding strength in her spine that she didn't know she possessed. "Clear boundaries. Got it. Should I schedule appointments to see my husband, or will you just send memos through your assistant?" For the first time since they met, Adrian almost smiles. There's a spark in Elena's eyes that he didn't expect, fire beneath the sweetness, steel beneath the softness. It's refreshing after years of people who agree with everything he says. "Sharp tongue," he observes. "I like that." "Good thing," Elena replies, lifting her chin with newfound confidence. "You're stuck with it for 90 days. Their moment of understanding is shattered by the shrill ring of Adrian's phone. The name Vanessa Crane illuminates the screen, and Elena watches as Adrian's entire demeanor transforms. His jaw tightens, his shoulders square, and his eyes go cold in a way that makes Elena suddenly grateful she's never been on the receiving end of that particular look. "What do you want, Vanessa?" His voice could freeze fire. The woman's voice carries through the phone speaker, honey sweet with poison underneath. "Congratulations on your marriage, darling. Such interesting timing. I look forward to meeting your new wife." The line goes dead, leaving silence that feels dangerous. "Ex-girlfriend?" Elena asks, though she already knows the answer is more complicated than that. Adrian's jaw works like he's chewing broken glass. Something like that. But Elena couldn't have known that Vanessa Crane was more than an ex-girlfriend. She was Adrian's greatest mistake, his deepest betrayal, and now, his most dangerous enemy. 5 years ago, Vanessa had been his vice president of acquisitions, his trusted confidant, and the woman he thought he might actually love. She was also the woman who sold company secrets to their biggest competitor, cost Adrian a $100 million deal, and nearly destroyed Knight Global Enterprises in the process. Adrian had forgiven her the business betrayal. Corporate espionage was part of the game, even if it came from someone he trusted. What he couldn't forgive was how she'd laughed when he confronted her, how she'd told him that seducing him had been the easiest part of her job, how she'd made it clear that every moment of their relationship had been a performance designed to gain his trust so she could destroy him more effectively. "Did you really think someone like me could love someone like you?" she had asked, her beautiful face twisted with contempt. "You're nothing but a bank account with good hair, Adrian. And now that I've taken what I needed, you're not even that interesting." That night, Adrian had made another promise to himself. Never again would he confuse business with pleasure, never again would he allow someone close enough to hurt him, and never again would he make the mistake of thinking that beautiful women wanted anything from him besides his money. Now Vanessa was back, and Adrian knew her well enough to know she wouldn't have called just to offer congratulations. That night, Elena lies in her pristine guest bedroom, staring at a ceiling painted with cherubs that seem to mock her with their innocent smiles. The bed is larger than her entire apartment back in Brooklyn, The sheets are softer than anything she's ever touched, and she's never felt more alone in her life. Through the walls, thick enough to muffle sound but not thick enough to block it entirely, she can hear Adrian in his study, engaged in what sounds like an increasingly heated phone conversation. His voice rises and falls in angry cadences, and Elena finds herself pressing her ear to the wall despite knowing she shouldn't eavesdrop on her fake husband's private conversations. "I don't care what you think you know, Vanessa." Adrian's voice carries the kind of fury that could melt steel. "Stay away from her." A woman's laugh drifts through the wall, cold and predatory. "Oh, Adrian. You have no idea what I know. But you will. Soon." Elena's blood runs cold. Even through muffled walls and closed doors, she can hear the malice in Vanessa Crane's voice, can feel the threat that hangs in the air like poison gas. "Enjoy your little charade while it lasts," Vanessa continues, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carries more menace than any shout. "I give it 2 weeks before your precious company, and your fake little wife, are nothing but memories." The line goes dead, leaving silence that feels like the calm before a hurricane. Elena realizes she's holding her breath, her heart pounding so hard it hurts. She's been thinking of this arrangement as a fairy tale with a 90-day expiration date. Live in luxury, attend fancy parties, collect $5 million and go home to save Sophie's life. But fairy tales don't usually come with villains who make threats in the middle of the night. Elena has stumbled into something far more dangerous than a fake marriage. She's become a pawn in a war she doesn't understand, fought between people who play for stakes higher than she ever imagined. The worst part? She can't run. Sophie's surgery is scheduled for next week, paid for by Adrian's money. The medical bills are already being handled by his accountants. Elena is trapped, not by legal contracts, but by love for her sister and desperation that runs deeper than fear. As she lies in her gilded cage, listening to the sounds of Manhattan 95 floors below, Elena realizes that she's agreed to more than a fake marriage. She's agreed to become a target in a game where she doesn't know the rules, doesn't understand the stakes, and has no idea how much danger she's actually in. But somewhere in the penthouse, Adrian Knight sits in his study, staring out at the city lights and thinking about the way Elena's eyes flashed when she stood up to him, the way she felt in his arms during their brief wedding kiss, and the growing certainty that the woman sleeping down the hall is nothing like anyone he's ever met. For the first time in 5 years, Adrian Knight is afraid, not of losing money or market share, but of caring about someone enough to get hurt again. And for the first time in her life, Elena Hart has everything she's ever wanted and has never been more terrified. The game has begun, and neither of them knows who's going to win. What Elena doesn't realize as she finally drifts off to sleep in her marble tower is that Vanessa Crane has been planning this moment for 5 years, waiting for Adrian to care about someone enough to make them a weakness she could exploit. And what Adrian doesn't realize as he sits alone in his study is that the woman he married to protect his company might be the very person who ends up saving his soul. But both of them are about to learn that in the world of billion-dollar empires and matters of the heart, the most dangerous enemy isn't the one you can see coming. It's the one who's already standing inside your defenses, smiling while they sharpen their knife. 3 weeks into their contract marriage, Elena Knight stands at the top of a curved marble staircase that belongs in a palace, not a penthouse. The woman looking back at her from the antique mirror is unrecognizable, transformed by Adrian's team of stylists into a vision that could grace the cover of Vogue. The sapphire blue gown hugs her figure like liquid starlight, its silk fabric worth more than she used to make in 6 months. Her dark hair is swept into an elegant chignon that exposes the graceful line of her neck, where diamond earrings catch the light and fracture it into tiny rainbows. But beneath the designer perfection, Elena's eyes still hold the nervousness of a girl playing dress-up in her mother's clothes. Tonight is the Metropolitan Museum of Art Gala, her debut as Adrian Knight's wife in front of New York's most ruthless social elite. The kind of people who can smell weakness from across a ballroom and destroy reputations with nothing more than a raised eyebrow and a whispered comment. Adrian waits at the bottom of the stairs, and when he looks up at her, something fundamental shifts in the air between them. He's seen the most beautiful women in the world, dated supermodels and socialites who turn heads wherever they go. But Elena, in this moment, takes his breath away in a way that has nothing to do with the expensive gown or professional styling. "You look..." He begins, then stops, seeming to search for words that have never failed him in boardrooms or negotiations. Elena's cheeks flush pink beneath her carefully applied makeup. "Expensive?" she asks, the same question she posed on their wedding day, but now with a hint of playful confidence that wasn't there before. "Beautiful," Adrian says quietly, and the single word carries weight that surprises them both. There's nothing performative about the compliment, nothing calculated or strategic. It's simply the truth, offered without expectation of response or reward. In that moment, looking up at Elena as she descends the stairs like something out of a fairy tale, Adrian feels something crack in the walls he's built around his heart. She's not trying to impress him or manipulate him or play the sophisticated games that everyone else in his world seems to consider essential entertainment. She's just herself, genuine, vulnerable, real. And somehow, that authenticity is more dangerous to his carefully controlled existence than any hostile corporate takeover he's ever faced. The Metropolitan Museum of Art transforms into a glittering wonderland for tonight's charity gala. The Temple of Dender serves as backdrop for New York's most powerful elite, who gather in designer gowns worth more than most people's houses and tuxedos tailored by craftsmen whose waiting lists stretch for years. Champagne flows like water from fountains carved from ice. Diamonds glitter like captured stars around the throats and wrists of women who collect jewelry the way other people collect stamps, and every conversation carries the weight of millions, whether in dollars, connections, or carefully guarded secrets. Adrian's hand rests protectively on Elena's lower back as they make their entrance, and the effect is immediate. Conversations halt mid-sentence. Camera flashes explode like paparazzi lightning. The whispers begin, rippling through the crowd like stones thrown into still water. "She's lovely, but where did she come from?" murmurs one society matron whose plastic surgery has left her face as smooth and expressive as marble. "I heard she was a teacher or something equally." "Quaint," responds another, the word teacher pronounced with the same distaste most people reserve for discussing contagious diseases. A business associate approaches Adrian with a kind of aggressive bonhomie that signals opportunity. "Knight. Finally settled down, eh? Smart move. Investors love stability. Nothing like a pretty wife to calm nervous shareholders." Elena smiles and nods, playing her part perfectly, but Adrian notices the slight tightening around her eyes, the way she flinches almost imperceptibly at being discussed like a commodity, a business asset acquired to improve quarterly reports. For the first time since they began this charade, he feels something that might be shame at the transactional nature of their arrangement. During a brief lull in the social performance, Adrian guides Elena through tall glass doors onto a private terrace overlooking Central Park. The autumn air is crisp against their skin, and the city spreads below them like a carpet of lights, beautiful and indifferent to the small human dramas playing out in its shadows. Do they always talk about people like they're not standing right there? Elena asks, her breath visible in small clouds in the cool air. Adrian loosens his tie slightly, the first crack in his perfectly composed facade all evening. "You'll get used to it. Eventually, you stop hearing it." Elena turns to face him, studying his profile as he looks out over the city he's conquered. "Will I? Because honestly, I feel like I'm in a museum exhibit." Behold, The Billionaire's Wife, circa 2024. Notice the careful posture, the practiced smile, the complete absence of any genuine human emotion. The corner of Adrian's mouth quirks upward in what might be the beginning of a real smile, not the polished version he wears for cameras and board meetings, but something genuine and unguarded. "You're handling it better than most would. Better than I did, my first time in that world." Elena's expression softens with surprise. Sometimes she forgets that Adrian wasn't born to this life of marble floors and crystal chandeliers, that somewhere in his carefully constructed past, he too was an outsider learning to navigate waters that could drown the unwary. "Most people don't have their sister's life hanging in the balance," Elena says quietly, and Adrian hears something in her voice that makes him turn away from the cityscape to look at her fully. "Tell me about her," he says, surprising himself with the request. Sophie. Elena's face transforms when she speaks her sister's name, all the carefully practiced social expressions falling away to reveal something luminous and pure underneath. She's 16. Brilliant, like, genuinely brilliant, not just proud sister brilliant. She wants to be a doctor, which is ironic considering. She lights up every room she enters. Has this laugh that makes you believe good things are still possible in the world. She pauses, wrapping her arms around herself against the evening chill. When our parents died, she was only 8. I've been her guardian, her sister, her mother, her father, her everything. Sometimes I look at her and can't believe I've managed not to completely mess up the most important job I'll ever have. Adrian watches her face as she speaks, sees the way love transforms her features into something almost sacred. That's a lot of responsibility for someone so young. Elena meets his gaze directly, her brown eyes serious and clear. Love isn't a burden, Adrian. It's a choice. Every day, you choose to care more about someone else's happiness than your own convenience. You choose to carry their worries as if they were your own. You choose to fight battles that aren't technically yours to fight. The words hang in the air between them like a challenge. Adrian has spent his adult life believing that love is weakness, that caring too much makes you vulnerable to the kind of pain that can destroy everything you've worked to build. But listening to Elena speak about Sophie, seeing the strength that comes from her devotion rather than the weakness he's always feared, something inside him begins to shift. Miles away from the museum's glittering gala, in a penthouse apartment that serves as both sanctuary and war room, Vanessa Crane paces across white marble floors like a predator circling wounded prey. Her apartment is a study in calculated perfection, all white furniture and black accents, floor-to-ceiling windows offering a view that rivals Adrian's, and an atmosphere so cold and pristine it feels more like a laboratory than a home. Vanessa herself is classically beautiful in an untouchable way that photographers love and men fear. Her platinum blonde hair never shows a strand out of place. Her designer clothes fit like they were sewn directly onto her body, and her ice blue eyes can cut through souls with surgical precision. At 30, she's built an empire of her own through a combination of ruthless intelligence, strategic seduction, and an absolute absence of conscience when it comes to getting what she wants. She's on the phone with someone whose voice remains carefully modulated to avoid recognition, but their conversation reveals the depth of conspiracy that surrounds Adrian and Elena's carefully constructed marriage. The little teacher is prettier than I expected, Vanessa says, her voice carrying the kind of detached assessment one might use to evaluate livestock. But that makes this more interesting. Adrian always did have a weakness for innocence, such an exploitable flaw in an otherwise formidable man. The voice on the other end asks a question we can't quite hear, but Vanessa's response chills the air in her pristine apartment. She thinks it's about shareholder confidence, about maintaining his reputation for the board. She has no idea about the real Blackstone deal or what Adrian truly stands to lose if this falls apart. 2 years ago, Vanessa Crane was 3 days away from becoming Mrs. Adrian Knight. Their engagement had been New York's social event of the century, a merger of 2 powerful families, 2 beautiful people, 2 fortunes that would have created a dynasty capable of influencing global markets. The wedding preparations alone cost more than most people's homes, with flowers flown in from 5 different countries and a guest list that read like a who's who of international power brokers. But on the Tuesday before their Saturday wedding, Adrian returned home early from a business trip to find Vanessa in their shared bed with Marcus Blackstone, CEO of Knight Global's biggest competitor. The betrayal cut deeper than infidelity. It was corporate espionage wrapped in silk sheets and perfumed with promises that were never meant to be kept. The merger talks that had been progressing smoothly for months collapsed overnight. Blackstone Industries pulled out of every deal, every partnership, every carefully negotiated alliance that had taken Adrian years to build. The financial loss was devastating, but the personal cost was something Adrian had never fully recovered from. Adrian thinks he's so clever with his contract bride, Vanessa continues, her smile visible in her voice even through the phone. But he's played right into my hands. When I expose the fake marriage, it won't just embarrass him, It will give the board grounds to question every decision he's made since. And when the shareholders panic about being deceived, Knight Global becomes vulnerable to hostile takeover, the voice confirms. Exactly. And who better to lead the charge than his former fiancée who tried to save him from himself? The narrative writes itself. Betrayed woman attempts to rescue the company from the man whose lies and desperation have compromised its integrity. The plan is elegant in its cruelty, designed not just to destroy Adrian financially, but to humiliate him in the most public way possible. Vanessa has spent 2 years planning this revenge, building alliances, acquiring stock positions, and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Back in the Knight penthouse, dawn creeps across Manhattan's skyline like a slow-burning fire, painting the kitchen windows gold as Elena moves quietly through the space, making coffee in silk pajamas and a matching robe that cost more than her old monthly rent. Without makeup, with her hair loose around her shoulders and her face soft with sleep, she looks more beautiful than most women do with full glam teams and professional lighting. Adrian enters for his usual pre-dawn workout, stops dead when he sees her standing at the espresso machine, morning light turning her into something that belongs in a Renaissance painting rather than a modern penthouse kitchen. Oh! Elena startles, nearly dropping the coffee cup. I'm sorry, I couldn't sleep and thought I'd make. It's fine, Adrian says, his voice rougher than usual. He's wearing workout clothes that do nothing to hide the impressive physique hidden beneath his usual business suits, and Elena finds herself stealing glances that make her cheeks warm. It's your house too. For now. The qualifier hangs in the air between them like a reminder of their expiration date, but Elena doesn't let it sting the way it might have 3 weeks ago. Instead, she pours him coffee without being asked. Black, no sugar, the way she's noticed he takes it during their carefully choreographed public appearances. You don't have to, Adrian begins. I know, Elena interrupts gently. I wanted to. They drink their coffee in comfortable silence, morning light streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows and transforming the kitchen into something warm and domestic. It feels more real, more intimate, than any of the elaborate dinners or charity galas they've attended as Adrian Knight and his perfectly presented wife. This is just Elena and Adrian, sharing coffee and quiet morning moments, and it terrifies them both with its simple authenticity. Can I ask you something? Elena says finally, setting down her cup and studying Adrian's profile as he looks out over the city. Adrian's shoulders tense slightly, a defensive reaction he's developed over years of being asked questions designed to trap or manipulate. Depends on the question. Elena takes a breath, choosing her words carefully. Why did you really need a wife? The board story seems incomplete. The silence stretches between them, filled with the distant sounds of Manhattan waking up 95 floors below. Adrian debates whether to maintain the careful distance they've established, whether to keep feeding Elena the sanitized version of truth he's perfected for public consumption. Finally, he sets down his coffee cup and turns to face her fully. There's a merger. Blackstone Industries. Worth $12 billion. Their CEO demands moral stability from partners. Apparently, my reputation for variety in female companions concerned him about my ability to honor long-term commitments. Elena processes this information, hearing what he's not saying as clearly as what he is. Variety. Adrian's expression grows defensive, walls slamming back into place with almost audible force. I don't do relationships, Elena. I do arrangements. Clear terms, defined expectations, mutual benefit without emotional complications. Elena meets his gaze steadily, seeing through his practiced indifference to the pain underneath. Until now. This is an arrangement too, Adrian says firmly, but his voice lacks its usual conviction. Elena steps closer, close enough that she can see the flecks of silver in his gray eyes, close enough to smell his cologne and feel the warmth radiating from his skin. Is it? The question hangs in the air like a challenge, like a dare, like an invitation to admit what they've both been feeling, but neither has been brave enough to voice. Adrian's breath catches, and for a moment, The careful boundaries they've established threaten to crumble entirely. The spell is broken by Elena's phone ringing, Sophie's contact photo, a smiling teenager with Elena's warm brown eyes, filling the screen. Elena answers with the kind of gentle urgency reserved for the people we love most. "Hey, sweetheart. How are you feeling?" Sophie's voice carries through the speaker, weak but trying to sound strong for her sister's sake. "Better. The new treatment is really helping, Elena. I can feel the difference already." Elena's eyes fill with tears. She tries to blink away. "That's wonderful, baby. That's such good news." "Elena," Sophie's voice grows serious, older than her 16 years. "I know this is hard for you. The money, the stress, whatever you had to do to make this happen, I know it wasn't easy." Elena's hand tightens on the phone, her knuckles white with the effort of keeping her voice steady. "Don't worry about any of that. The only thing that matters is you getting better. That's it. Nothing else. I love you, Elena. More than all the stars in the sky." It's something their mother used to say, a family phrase that carries the weight of shared history and unbreakable bonds. Elena's voice breaks slightly as she responds, "I love you too, sweetheart. More than all the stars." Adrian watches this exchange with something shifting fundamental in his chest, some long-frozen part of his heart beginning to thaw despite his best efforts to maintain emotional distance. Elena's love for her sister is pure, selfless, unconditional, everything his mother's love wasn't. Watching Elena care for Sophie with such fierce devotion makes him understand, perhaps for the first time, what real love actually looks like. Later that morning, in the Knight Global boardroom where Adrian has won and lost fortunes, Elena sits beside him as the supportive wife while he presents the Blackstone merger to his board of directors. She's dressed professionally but elegantly, playing her part perfectly as the stable, grounding influence the shareholders want to see. Everything seems to be proceeding smoothly until board member Thompson, a man whose nervous energy could power small cities, clears his throat with obvious discomfort. "Adrian, there are some rumors circulating about your marriage." The temperature in the room drops 10 degrees. Adrian's voice becomes dangerously quiet, the tone he uses just before destroying someone's career. "What kind of rumors?" Thompson shifts in his leather chair like a man sitting on hot coals. "Questions about the timeline. Some investors are saying it seems convenient. The timing of the marriage, so close to the merger negotiations." Board Chairman Harrison, whose hands shake slightly as he shuffles through papers, adds his own concerns. "There's also been some unusual stock activity. Someone's been buying Knight Global shares in small increments over the past few weeks, building a position without triggering disclosure requirements." Adrian's knuckles go white as he grips his fountain pen hard enough to crack it. "Who?" Harrison's voice is barely above a whisper. "We're still investigating, but the purchases are being made through multiple shell companies. Someone with significant resources and legal expertise is deliberately obscuring their identity." Elena notices Adrian's reaction, the way his jaw clenches, the way his breathing becomes shallow and controlled. Without thinking, acting purely on instinct, she places her hand over his on the conference table. The gesture is so natural, so genuinely caring, that it silences every person in the room. Elena looks around the table at these powerful men who suddenly seem small and frightened, and she finds a strength in herself that she didn't know existed. "Gentlemen, I understand your concerns about perception. The business world thrives on speculation and rumor, and I'm sure our marriage has provided plenty of material for both." The board members stare at her with surprise. They expected the pretty young wife to sit quietly and look decorative, not to speak with intelligence and authority about their concerns. Elena continues, her voice growing stronger with each word. "But I can assure you that my commitment to this company, and to Adrian, is absolute. I may not have been born into your world of board meetings and stock prices, but I understand loyalty. I understand what it means to fight for what matters. And Adrian matters." The simple declaration hits the room like a thunderbolt. These men have heard countless speeches about corporate synergy and shareholder value, but Elena's words carry something they rarely encounter in their world: genuine emotion backed by unshakable conviction. Adrian stares at her, thunderstruck by her passionate defense of him, by the way she claimed their relationship as real in front of the most important people in his professional life. Elena. After the board meeting ends and the members file out with uncertain murmurs and worried glances, Adrian and Elena find themselves alone in his corner office, the tension from the meeting still crackling in the air between them. "You didn't have to do that," Adrian says, but his voice carries gratitude rather than criticism. Elena stands near the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out over the city that has become her temporary kingdom. "Yes, I did. Those men were circling you like vultures, looking for any sign of weakness they could exploit. I couldn't just sit there and watch them tear you apart." Adrian moves closer, studying her profile against the Manhattan skyline. "Why?" Elena turns to face him, her brown eyes serious and vulnerable. "Because despite what our contract says, despite all the legal language about business arrangements and mutual benefit, I care about what happens to you." The admission hangs in the air between them like a bridge neither is sure they should cross. Adrian steps closer, his hand reaching almost of its own accord to touch her face, thumb brushing across her cheek in a gesture so tender it makes Elena's breath catch. "Elena," he whispers, her name a prayer on his lips. "Yes," she breathes, leaning unconsciously into his touch. For a moment, the contract doesn't exist. For a moment, the 90-day expiration date doesn't matter. For a moment, they're just a man and woman who found something unexpected and precious in each other, something worth protecting despite the dangers that surround them. Adrian leans closer, his lips nearly touching hers, when the office door swings open without warning. "Adrian, darling. I hope I'm not interrupting anything important." Vanessa Crane sweeps into the office like a force of nature wrapped in designer silk, her ice-blue eyes taking in every detail of the charged scene before her. Elena's flushed cheeks, Adrian's protective stance, the way they spring apart like guilty teenagers caught by disapproving parents. Elena and Adrian separate as if they've been burned, the spell of intimacy shattered by Vanessa's calculated intrusion. But Vanessa notices everything, files away every telling detail for future use. "You must be the famous Elena," Vanessa says, her voice honey-sweet with poison lurking underneath. "I'm Vanessa Crane. Adrian's. Well, let's just say we have quite a lot of history together." Elena straightens her spine, calling on reserves of strength she didn't know she possessed. "His ex-fiancée." Vanessa's perfectly sculpted eyebrows rise with surprise that Elena knows about their past. "Oh, he told you about me? How thoroughly modern of him. Most men prefer to keep their romantic failures buried." Adrian's voice carries a warning that would make lesser mortals retreat. "Vanessa." But Vanessa ignores him entirely, her attention fixed on Elena like a predator sizing up prey. "I hope you know what you're getting into, dear." Adrian can be so intense in his commitments. Of course, they don't always last as long as one might hope. But then, I suppose you're not expecting this to be permanent anyway. Elena feels ice water in her veins but keeps her voice steady. "I'm not worried." Vanessa's smile sharpens to something that could cut glass. "Of course not. Why would you be? After all, you've got such a solid foundation. So much trust and honesty between you." The words land like carefully aimed arrows, each one designed to find its mark in the vulnerable spaces between truth and deception. Elena realizes with growing horror that Vanessa knows something, maybe everything, about their arrangement. As Vanessa glides toward the door with predatory grace, she pauses as if struck by a sudden thought. "Oh, Elena? That charity gala next week, the one for children's medical research? I'm chairing it. I do hope you'll attend. I have such fascinating stories about the causes we support. Stories about families who'll do absolutely anything to save their loved ones." The words hit Elena like a physical blow. Vanessa knows about Sophie. About the medical bills. about the desperate circumstances that drove Elena to accept Adrian's proposal. The carefully constructed facade of their marriage suddenly feels as fragile as spun glass. Elena's blood turns to ice water in her veins, but she manages to keep her voice level. I'll be sure to put it on our calendar. Vanessa's smile could freeze hell itself. Wonderful. I'm sure we'll have so much to discuss. After Vanessa leaves, the office feels contaminated by her presence, poisoned by implications and threats that hover in the air like toxic gas. Elena sinks into one of the leather chairs, her hands shaking with the effort of maintaining composure. She knows, Elena whispers, more to herself than to Adrian. Somehow, she knows everything. Adrian's jaw works like he's chewing broken glass, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. Vanessa is dangerous, but she's also patient. She won't move until she's sure she can destroy everything at once. Elena looks up at him, seeing not the confident billionaire who commands boardrooms and builds empires, but a man who carries old wounds that have never properly healed. What did she do to you? 2 years ago, what really happened? Adrian is quiet for so long that Elena thinks he won't answer. When he finally speaks, his voice carries pain that time hasn't dulled. I thought I loved her. More than that, I thought she loved me. 3 days before our wedding, I came home early from a business trip and found her in bed with Marcus Blackstone. Elena's heart breaks a little for the man Adrian was then, the man who still believed love was possible before betrayal taught him otherwise. I'm sorry. That must have been. The betrayal wasn't the worst part, Adrian continues, his eyes focused on something Elena can't see. The worst part was when she laughed. When I confronted her, she actually laughed and told me that seducing me had been the easiest part of her job. That every moment between us had been performance art designed to gain access to company information. Elena feels rage on Adrian's behalf, the kind of protective fury that comes from watching someone you care about relive their deepest pain. She used you. She destroyed more than just our relationship. The merger with Blackstone would have made Knight Global the most powerful media conglomerate in the world. When it fell through, we lost billions in potential revenue and market position we've never fully recovered. Understanding dawns in Elena's eyes like a terrible sunrise. And now she's back, trying to finish what she started. Adrian nods grimly. Vanessa doesn't just want to hurt me personally. She wants to destroy everything I've built, everything I've worked for. And somehow, she's figured out that you're my weakness. The word weakness hangs between them like an accusation, but Elena hears something else in it, the admission that she matters to him, that somewhere in the past 3 weeks, their contract marriage has become something neither of them planned. That night, Elena lies in her pristine guest bedroom, staring at a ceiling painted with angels that seem to mock her with their innocent faces. Sleep eludes her as her mind replays every moment of the day, every subtle threat in Vanessa's words, every tender look from Adrian that she's not sure she's allowed to treasure. At midnight, her phone buzzes with a text from an unknown number. Elena's blood freezes as she reads, "Meet me tomorrow. Pier 47, midnight. Come alone, or Sophie's surgery gets cancelled. A friend." Elena stares at the message until the words blur, her hands shaking so violently she can barely hold the phone. Someone knows about Sophie. Someone knows about the contract. Someone has the power to destroy everything she's sacrificed for, everyone she loves. She looks toward the hallway that leads to Adrian's study, where soft light spills from beneath the door. She could wake him, tell him about the threat, ask for his help. But the message was clear: come alone. And Elena has learned that in the world of billion-dollar games and deadly secrets, following instructions might be the only way to keep the people you love alive. Through the walls, she hears Adrian's phone ring, followed by his sharp intake of breath and a conversation that makes her blood run even colder. What do you mean someone's been asking questions about the contract? Who would know about? Adrian's voice trails off, then returns with deadly quiet. No. No, that's impossible. We were careful. Every document was confidential, every detail protected. Elena's heart stops. Someone knows about the contract. Someone is hunting them both, circling like sharks in water that grows bloodier by the day. As she lies in her marble tower, surrounded by luxuries she never dreamed of possessing, Elena realizes that she's become a target in a war she doesn't understand, fought between people who play for stakes she can't even comprehend. The fairy tale has become a nightmare, and the prince who was supposed to save her might be the very person she needs to save. Elena stares at the threatening text message and whispers to the empty room, "What have I gotten myself into?" But even as fear courses through her veins like poison, even as she realizes that tomorrow night could change everything, Elena knows she'll go to that pier. She'll face whatever enemy awaits her in the shadows. Because somewhere in the past 3 weeks, Adrian Knight has become more than a business arrangement, more than a means to save Sophie's life. He's become the man she's falling in love with, and love, real love, means you'll walk into hell itself to protect the people who matter. The question that haunts her as she finally drifts toward uneasy sleep is whether she'll survive long enough to find out if Adrian feels the same way. Elena is being hunted by an enemy she can't see, while falling for a man she was never supposed to love. The walls are closing in, and soon she'll have to choose between saving her sister and protecting Adrian's heart. In a world where billion-dollar empires hang in the balance and love is the most dangerous game of all, what would you risk everything for? The family that raised you, or the person who makes you believe in tomorrow? Sometimes the most dangerous enemy isn't the one you can see coming. It's the one who's been waiting in the shadows all along, watching, planning, preparing to strike at the moment when you have the most to lose. Midnight fog rolls off the Hudson River like ghostly fingers reaching toward the city, turning the lights of Manhattan into hazy jewels suspended in darkness. Pier 47 sits empty except for the rhythmic lapping of water against weathered pilings and the distant hum of traffic that never sleeps. Elena stands at the edge of the wooden dock, her dark clothes making her nearly invisible against the night, her heart pounding so hard she can feel it in her throat. She's never been this frightened in her life, not even during the worst days of Sophie's illness when the doctors spoke in whispers and medical charts became battlegrounds between hope and despair. But tonight, everything she loves hangs in the balance. Sophie's life, Adrian's empire, and the fragile connection that has grown between her and the man she never expected to care about. A figure emerges from the shadows between shipping containers, moving with the predatory confidence of someone who holds all the cards. Marcus Blackstone steps into the pale circle of a single streetlight, and Elena feels her blood turn to ice water. At 40-something, he's handsome in the way that dangerous men often are. Sharp cheekbones, expensive coat, calculating smile that never reaches his eyes. Everything about him screams power and ruthless ambition. "Mrs. Knight," he says, her married name rolling off his tongue like a curse. "Thank you for coming." So few people follow instructions these days. Elena lifts her chin, calling on reserves of strength she didn't know she possessed. "What do you want?" Marcus begins to circle her like a shark scenting blood, his footsteps echoing off the water in a rhythm that matches her racing heartbeat. Straight to business. I like that quality in a woman. Very unlike your husband, who prefers elaborate games and emotional manipulation. Elena's hands clench into fists at her sides. Adrian doesn't know I'm here. Marcus's smile widens, revealing teeth that gleam white in the dim light. No, he doesn't. And that's going to make this so much more delicious when it all comes crashing down. The fog seems to thicken around them, muffling sound and creating a world that exists only for predator and prey. Elena realizes with growing horror that Marcus has chosen this location carefully. Isolated, abandoned, somewhere screams wouldn't carry beyond the lapping waves. "You see, Elena, may I call you Elena? You're not just Adrian's fake wife," Marcus continues, pulling his phone from his coat pocket with theatrical precision. "You're his weakness. And I've been waiting 2 years to find his weakness." Elena's voice comes out steadier than she feels. "I don't know what you're talking about." Marcus laughs, a sound like breaking glass scattered across concrete. "Let me refresh your memory, darling." He holds up his phone, and Elena's world tilts on its axis. The screen displays photo after photo in devastating clarity. Her signing the contract in James Morrison's office, entering City Hall in her simple white dress, medical bills for Sophie with payment confirmations from Knight Global accounts, even security footage of her entering Adrian's building that first night. How did you? Elena's voice fails her completely. Vanessa is very thorough, Marcus says, scrolling through the damning evidence with obvious satisfaction. She's been documenting everything since day one. Every coffee date, every public appearance, every tender moment between you and Adrian has been catalogued for exactly this purpose. Elena feels the trap closing around her like steel jaws, feels the weeks of growing love and tentative hope crumbling into ash. You've been watching us. Following us. Surveillance is such an ugly word, Marcus replies, pocketing his phone. I prefer to think of it as investment research. And you, my dear Elena, have been a very profitable investment. The wind off the river cuts through Elena's jacket, but the cold she feels has nothing to do with the weather. What do you want? Marcus stops circling, positioning himself between Elena and the path back to the street, effectively trapping her at the end of the pier. Here's what's going to happen. Tomorrow night at the charity gala, you know, the one where New York's finest gather to congratulate themselves on their generosity, you're going to make a little speech. Elena's blood freezes in her veins. What kind of speech? You're going to publicly confess that your marriage is fake. You're going to tell everyone, the investors, the board members, the media, that Adrian Knight is a fraud who hired a wife to deceive his shareholders and manipulate stock prices. The words hit Elena like physical blows, each one designed to destroy not just Adrian's reputation, but everything he's worked to build. I won't do that. Marcus pulls out his phone again, and this time the photos make Elena's knees buckle. Sophie leaving the hospital earlier today, smiling and waving at someone off camera. Sophie getting into a car Elena doesn't recognize. Sophie in locations Elena has never seen. These were taken this afternoon, Marcus says conversationally, as if discussing the weather rather than delivering death threats. Such a pretty girl, your sister. 16 years old, isn't she? Just beginning to recover, just starting to believe in the future again. It would be terrible if something happened to interrupt her treatment, or her recovery. Elena's voice comes out as barely a whisper. You wouldn't. She's just a child. She's never hurt anyone in her life. Marcus's expression doesn't change, but something cold and final settles in his eyes. I'm a businessman, Elena. I deal in leverage, and leverage comes in many forms. Your sister represents the ultimate leverage, the one thing you value more than your own life. Elena feels the world spinning around her, feels every careful plan and desperate hope dissolving into nightmare. Sophie, sweet Sophie who still believes in happy endings and trusts Elena to protect her from the monsters that lurk in the dark corners of the world. What exactly are you asking me to do? Marcus steps closer, close enough that Elena can smell his expensive cologne and see her own reflection, small and terrified, in his dark eyes. Confess tomorrow night, and Sophie gets her surgery plus $1 million trust fund for her future. Refuse and, well, medical accidents happen all the time. Equipment fails. Medications get contaminated. Doctors make tragic mistakes. Elena's world reduces to this single moment, this impossible choice between the two people she loves most in the world. Save Sophie and destroy Adrian, or protect Adrian and watch her sister die. Why? The word tears from her throat like a physical thing. Why destroy him? What did Adrian ever do to you that justifies this? Marcus's mask slips for just a moment, revealing something raw and festering underneath. 2 years ago, Adrian Knight stole my company and my fiancée. He destroyed everything I'd built, everything I'd worked for. Tomorrow night, I take back everything he owes me with interest. Elena realizes she's looking at a man consumed by hatred, someone who has spent 2 years planning this revenge, feeding on his anger until it became the only thing keeping him alive. Vanessa chose him over you. Vanessa was manipulated, Marcus snarls, his composure cracking. Adrian Knight has a gift for making people believe his lies, for making them think they matter to him when they're nothing more than acquisitions on his balance sheet. The irony isn't lost on Elena. Marcus accuses Adrian of the very manipulation he's practicing right now, the same emotional exploitation disguised as business necessity. I need an answer, Elena. Time is running out, and my patience has limits. Elena looks out over the dark river, thinking of Sophie sleeping peacefully in her hospital bed, trusting that her big sister will always find a way to make everything right. She thinks of Adrian in his study, probably working late and leaving little notes in the margins of contracts the way he started doing since they've been married. Small jokes, observations, tiny declarations of growing affection that he thinks no one will notice. If I do this, Elena says finally, if I destroy Adrian tomorrow night, how do I know you'll keep your word about Sophie? Marcus pulls out a contract. Because of course there's a contract. Because in his world everything comes down to legal documents and binding obligations. Sign this, and Sophie's treatment is guaranteed for life. Refuse, and she won't live to see her 17th birthday. Elena stares at the papers that would save one person she loves by destroying the other, and realizes that some choices are so impossible they break your soul no matter what you decide. The next morning finds Elena sitting in the penthouse living room, watching sunrise paint Manhattan in shades of gold and amber while her heart breaks quietly inside her chest. She hasn't slept, hasn't even tried to sleep, since returning from the pier. Instead, she spent the hours before dawn writing letters she hopes no one will ever have to read, making plans that feel like preparing for her own funeral. Adrian finds her there as he emerges for his morning workout, and the concern that immediately crosses his face makes Elena's chest tighten with fresh grief for everything they're about to lose. Elena? What's wrong? She can't look at him directly, can't bear to see the growing warmth in his storm cloud eyes, the way his sharp features have softened over their weeks together, the small signs of happiness that have begun appearing in the corners of his smile. Nothing, she lies, her voice hollow. Just couldn't sleep. Adrian sits beside her on the white leather sofa, close enough that she can smell his cologne and feel the warmth radiating from his skin. Over the past month, these quiet morning moments have become precious to both of them. The time before the world intrudes with its demands and deceptions, when they can pretend their marriage is built on more than legal documents and mutual desperation. Talk to me, Adrian says, and the gentle command in his voice nearly undoes her completely. Elena turns to look at him, really look at him, memorizing the details she'll carry with her after tonight destroys everything between them. The dark hair that's never quite perfectly styled despite his expensive barber. The small scar above his left eyebrow that he got falling off his bike at age 7. The way he unconsciously reaches for her hand when he's thinking, as if touching her helps organize his thoughts. Adrian, she begins, then stops, unsure how to voice the impossible question burning in her chest. Yes. Elena takes a shaking breath. If I told you something that could hurt you, would you want to know? Adrian's entire body goes alert. The successful businessman recognizing a threat even when it comes wrapped in the voice of someone he's learning to love. What kind of something? Elena fights back tears that feel like acid in her throat. A secret. One that could destroy everything you've worked for, everything you've built. Adrian reaches for her hands, his strong fingers intertwining with hers in a gesture that has become as natural as breathing. Elena, you're scaring me. The moment stretches between them like a bridge Elena knows she can't cross. If she tells him about Marcus, about the threats to Sophie, Adrian will try to protect her. He'll use every resource at his disposal, call in every favor, mobilize his entire empire to keep her sister safe. And in doing so, he'll walk straight into Marcus's trap. Because Marcus is counting on Adrian's protective instincts. He's banking on the love that has grown between them. The way Adrian's eyes light up when Elena enters a room, the careful way he's begun talking about their future as if it extends beyond the original 90-day contract. Elena realizes with crystalline clarity that her only choice is to save Adrian the only way she knows how, by sacrificing herself on the altar of his ignorance. Never mind, she says, the lie cutting her tongue like broken glass. Pre-gala nerves, I guess. Adrian studies her face with the intensity he usually reserves for hostile takeover negotiations. The gala tonight. You don't have to come if you're not feeling well. We could say you have food poisoning, let you stay home. Elena almost laughs at the bitter irony. Oh, I'll be there. Wouldn't miss it for the world. After Adrian leaves for the office, Elena spends the day writing letters that feel like epitaphs. One to Adrian, explaining everything, Marcus's threats, Vanessa's involvement, the impossible choice between protecting him and saving Sophie. She tells him about the mornings she spent watching him make coffee, the way he hums unconsciously when he's working, the small kindnesses he thinks no one notices. She writes to Sophie, telling her 16-year-old sister how proud she is of the young woman she's becoming, how their parents would have loved watching her grow into someone so strong and brilliant and full of hope. She explains that sometimes love means making choices that look like betrayal, but are actually the deepest form of protection. She writes to the lawyers, authorizing Adrian's legal team to take whatever steps necessary to protect Knight Global from the fallout of what she's about to do. She signs over her rights to everything Adrian has given her, every financial security he's provided, every legal protection their marriage has created. Elena seals the letters in envelopes and places them on her pillow where Adrian will find them after tonight's gala, after the world learns the truth about their contract marriage, after she becomes the villain in a story that was supposed to have a happy ending. As evening approaches, Elena prepares for battle. She chooses a stunning red gown from the selection Adrian's stylists provided, the color of blood, of sacrifice, of love that costs everything. The dress fits her like liquid fire, transforming her into something beautiful and dangerous and doomed. When Adrian sees her descending the marble staircase, his breath catches in exactly the way it did their first night at the Met Gala. But tonight, Elena memorizes the sound, stores it away with all the other small treasures she'll carry into exile. "You look incredible," Adrian says, and the genuine admiration in his voice makes Elena want to weep. "Thank you," she replies, her fingers tracing the elegant line of his jaw one last time. "You look pretty incredible yourself." Adrian adjusts his black tie, studying her reflection in the antique mirror. "Elena, are you sure you're all right? You seem different tonight." Elena kisses his cheek, breathing in the scent of his skin, the warmth of his presence. "I'm perfect. Tonight, everything becomes perfect." The grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel has been transformed into a crystalline wonderland for the charity gala, with ceiling-high arrangements of white roses and cascading orchids that cost more than most people's cars. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbow light across marble floors where New York's most powerful elite gather in glittering gowns and perfectly tailored tuxedos. This is society at its most dazzling and most dangerous. Elena enters on Adrian's arm, but tonight feels fundamentally different from every other gala they've attended. Every smile feels forced, every laugh hollow, every conversation laden with subtext she's only now beginning to understand. She's walking toward her own execution, and the worst part is that she's the one who has to pull the trigger. She's attended galas before as Adrian's wife, but tonight she isn't playing a role. Tonight, she's saying goodbye to the only real love she's ever known, and the weight of that truth makes every step feel like walking through quicksand toward an inevitable drowning. Vanessa appears beside them like a predator materializing from smoke, resplendent in a silver gown that catches light like armor. Her platinum hair is styled in an elaborate updo that probably required 3 hours and a small army of stylists, and her ice blue eyes glitter with anticipation. "Elena, darling," Vanessa purrs, her voice honey-sweet with poison lurking underneath. "You look absolutely radiant tonight. Almost like a woman with a secret." Elena finds strength she didn't know she possessed, meeting Vanessa's gaze with steady defiance. "Don't we all have secrets, Vanessa?" Vanessa's smile sharpens to something that could cut glass. "Some more dangerous than others. I do hope you're ready for tonight's entertainment." Adrian notices the charged atmosphere between the two women, his protective instincts immediately heightening to full alert. "What entertainment?" Vanessa's expression transforms to one of pure innocence, the kind of calculated sweetness that warns of poison hidden in candy. "Oh, just a little surprise I've prepared for the evening. Elena knows all about it, don't you, dear?" Before Elena can respond, the master of ceremonies taps his microphone, sending feedback squealing through the sound system and drawing every eye in the ballroom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a very special presentation tonight. Mrs. Elena Knight has graciously agreed to say a few words about the importance of family and the value of honesty in our modern world." Elena's blood turns to ice water in her veins. This wasn't part of Marcus's plan, at least not the version he'd shared with her. He's forcing her hand earlier than expected, giving her no time to prepare, no chance to find another way out of the trap. Adrian turns to her, confusion and growing alarm clear in his expression. "Elena? You didn't tell me about a speech." Elena looks at him, really looks at him, memorizing the curve of his mouth, the concerned furrow of his brow, the way he instinctively moves closer when he senses she's in distress. "Adrian, But there are no words for what she needs to say, no way to explain that she's about to destroy him in order to save him, that every word she's about to speak will be a lie told in service of a deeper truth. Elena moves through the crowd like a ghost walking toward her own funeral. Every face turns to watch her progress toward the podium. Every camera phone emerges to capture what society gossip columnists will spend weeks analyzing. The microphone waits like an executioner's block, and Elena grips it with hands that shake despite her best efforts to appear calm. She looks out over a sea of expectant faces, socialites hungry for scandal, businessmen calculating how whatever she's about to say might affect their investments, reporters sensing a story that could make careers or destroy reputations. Then her eyes find Adrian's in the crowd, and he looks so proud, so trusting, so completely unaware that she's about to detonate a bomb that will destroy everything he's worked to build. "Thank you all for coming tonight," Elena begins, her voice barely steady over the sound system. "I have something to confess." The room holds its breath, 500 people leaning forward in anticipation of secrets about to be spilled. Elena sees Marcus in the crowd, his phone held prominently where she can see the screen, a live video feed of Sophie in her hospital room, unknowingly vulnerable to whatever punishment Marcus will inflict if Elena fails to follow his script. "These past months as Adrian's wife have taught me something profound about love," Elena continues, tears beginning to flow despite her efforts to maintain composure. "About what it means to sacrifice everything for the people who matter most." Adrian smiles, thinking she's building towards some romantic declaration, some public affirmation of the feelings that have grown between them. He has no idea she's about to break his heart in front of everyone who matters in his professional and personal life. Elena looks at Marcus again, sees him nod toward his phone screen where Sophie sleeps peacefully, trusting that her big sister will always protect her from the monsters that hide in shadow. "Sometimes love means protecting someone," Elena says, her voice growing stronger even as her heart shatters, "even when it costs you everything you've ever wanted." This is the moment. This is where she's supposed to deliver the killing blow to Adrian's reputation, where she confesses that their marriage is a fraud, that he hired her like an actress to play a role in his corporate theater. This is where she destroys the man she loves to save the sister she would die for. Elena opens her mouth to speak Marcus's words, to recite the script that will save Sophie and damn Adrian. She sees Marcus in the crowd, pointing to his phone with threatening urgency. She sees Vanessa beside him, anticipation lighting her eyes like flames. And then she looks at Adrian again. Really looks at him. Sees the way he's watching her with such pride, such trust, such deep and growing love that it takes her breath away. In that moment, Elena Hart Knight makes the most courageous decision of her life. "What I want to confess is this," she says, her voice ringing clear and strong through the ballroom's hushed silence. The room waits. Cameras flash. History prepares to pivot on the words of one young woman who has run out of safe choices. "I came into this marriage for the wrong reasons," Elena declares, and gasps ripple through the crowd like stones thrown into still water. Adrian's face goes white, but she continues before he can speak, before anyone can stop her from burning down the careful lies they've built together. I needed money for my sister's medical care. Adrian offered me a contract, a business arrangement that would save Sophie's life in exchange for playing the role of his wife for 90 days. The ballroom erupts in whispers and shocked exclamations. Camera flashes explode like lightning strikes. Adrian stares at her with something that might be betrayal or might be understanding. She can't tell which, and it doesn't matter anymore. But somewhere between the signatures and the ceremonies, Elena continues, her voice growing stronger with each word, something real happened. Something neither of us expected, neither of us planned, neither of us could control. Marcus's face in the crowd transforms from anticipation to confusion to growing rage as he realizes Elena is veering away from his script. I fell in love with my husband, Elena declares, her voice carrying to every corner of the ballroom. Really, truly, devastatingly in love with a man who was supposed to be nothing more than a business partner. Adrian's expression shifts from shock to something that might be hope, might be love, might be the dawning realization that Elena is choosing him over her own safety. So yes, Elena says, looking directly at Marcus now, her voice ringing with defiance, our marriage began as a contract. But it became something neither of us expected. It became real. It became love. And anyone who thinks they can use that against us clearly doesn't understand what love can do when it decides to fight back. The room erupts in chaos, whispers becoming shouts, camera flashes creating a strobe effect, reporters rushing toward exits to file stories that will reshape tomorrow's headlines. Elena locks eyes with Marcus across the crowded ballroom. I know there are people here tonight who want to see us fail. Who think love can be manipulated or destroyed or used as a weapon against the people brave enough to claim it. But they're wrong. Before security can react, before Marcus can process what's happening, Adrian pushes through the crowd and takes the stage. He pulls Elena into his arms with a force that speaks of possession, protection, and a love that has finally found its voice. Adrian takes the microphone, his voice carrying the authority of a man who has built empires and destroyed enemies. My wife just showed more courage than any CEO in any boardroom, more integrity than any politician in any election, more strength than any warrior in any battle. He looks out over the crowd, meeting the eyes of investors and rivals and allies alike. Yes, our marriage began as an arrangement. A contract designed to meet mutual needs in a world that often demands we sacrifice authenticity for success. Adrian turns to Elena, speaking to her rather than the crowd. But she's absolutely right. Love doesn't care about contracts or timelines or the careful plans we make to protect ourselves from getting hurt. Then Adrian does something that will be replayed on gossip shows and social media for months. He kisses his wife in front of 1,000 people, cameras, and enemies. It's real, raw, utterly shameless, and completely devastating in its honesty. When they break apart, both breathing heavily, Adrian speaks into the microphone again. I love you too, Elena Hart Knight. I think I've loved you since that first morning you made me coffee and treated me like a human being instead of a bank account. The kiss that follows brings down the house, literally. The cheering and applause are so thunderous that several crystal chandeliers begin to sway. But the real drama is just beginning, because love declarations and public confessions are only the opening moves in a much larger game. Marcus storms toward the stage with Vanessa beside him, both furious that their carefully orchestrated plan has exploded in their faces. Marcus grabs Elena's arm as she descends from the podium, his fingers digging into her skin hard enough to leave bruises. You stupid girl, he snarls, all pretense of civilization abandoned. Do you have any idea what you've just done? Adrian's voice drops to a temperature that could freeze flames. Take your hand off my wife. Marcus's grip tightens, his face twisted with rage and desperation. Your wife? This pathetic little gold digger who just confessed to marrying you for money. Adrian steps between them with the fluid grace of a predator protecting his mate. She's the woman who just chose love over blackmail. Something you clearly don't understand. Vanessa, seeing their plan disintegrating, abandons all subtlety. You think this is over? You have no idea what we know about your precious Knight Global. The Blackstone merger, the overseas accounts, Adrian's expression shifts to one of dawning realization. The hostile takeover. You've been buying shares. Marcus straightens, regaining some of his composure now that the conversation has shifted to familiar territory. 12% and counting. Soon we'll have enough to call for a board vote on your leadership. Your little romantic confession just gave us all the ammunition we need. Elena steps forward, understanding flooding through her like ice water. This was never about the contract marriage, was it? You were going to destroy Adrian either way. Vanessa's smile returns, cold and sharp as winter wind. The contract was just the cherry on top, darling. Public humiliation before corporate annihilation. We wanted Adrian to feel every moment of his downfall. Adrian signals to his security team with a subtle gesture that speaks of years of corporate warfare. Gentlemen, please escort Ms. Crane and Mr. Blackstone from the premises. They're no longer welcome at this or any future event I attend. Marcus laughs as security approaches, the sound bitter and unhinged. This isn't over, Knight. You may have won tonight's battle, but the war. Actually, Marcus, Adrian interrupts, pulling out his phone with theatrical precision, it is over. You see, while you were focused on buying Knight Global shares and plotting elaborate revenge schemes, you missed something rather important. Adrian turns his phone screen toward Marcus and Vanessa, both of whom go pale as they read whatever information it displays. I've been buying Blackstone Industries shares for the past 6 weeks, Adrian announces, his voice carrying clearly through the hushed ballroom. As of market close today, I own controlling interest in your company, Marcus. 51%, to be precise. Marcus stares at the phone screen as if it might spontaneously combust. That's impossible. I would have been notified of any major stock movements. Adrian's smile could power small cities. Not if the purchases were made through a carefully constructed network of shell companies, each buying just under the disclosure threshold. Elena taught me something valuable about fighting for what matters. I decided to apply that lesson to business. Vanessa plays her last desperate card, her voice rising to a near shriek. What about Sophie? Your precious sister-in-law? One phone call from me, and her treatment stops permanently. Elena looks at Vanessa with something that might be pity if it weren't quite so fierce. Actually, Vanessa, you might want to check your phone. Vanessa fumbles for her device, her face draining of color as she reads whatever message has appeared on her screen. Elena's voice carries clearly through the ballroom. That's a recording of you and Marcus discussing your plan to threaten a 16-year-old cancer patient. It's already been sent to every major news outlet in the city, along with copies to the FBI, the SEC, and the New York State Attorney General's office. Adrian stares at Elena with undisguised admiration. When did you? This morning, Elena replies, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her system. I recorded our conversation at the pier last night. I was originally planning to use it to protect you after I destroyed myself tonight, but then I realized something important. She takes Adrian's hand, their fingers intertwining with practiced ease. We're stronger together than either of us could ever be apart. Vanessa's composure finally cracks completely. You can't prove anything concrete. Corporate espionage is nearly impossible to prosecute, and threats can be explained away as. Actually, Vanessa, Elena interrupts, Marcus was extremely thorough in explaining your entire conspiracy. Blackmail, threats against a minor, securities fraud, conspiracy to manipulate stock prices. I believe the FBI will find it all very interesting reading. As if summoned by Elena's words, federal agents begin moving through the crowd, their badges glinting under the crystal chandeliers. The gala guests part like the Red Sea as the agents approach Marcus and Vanessa, who suddenly look very small and very trapped. Marcus Blackstone, Vanessa Crane, the lead agent announces in a voice that carries absolute authority, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit securities fraud, blackmail, and making terrorist threats against a minor. The ballroom erupts in chaos as handcuffs click into place and Miranda rights are read over the buzz of 100 conversations. Society photographers capture every moment of the downfall, ensuring that tomorrow's headlines will tell the story of love triumphant and justice served. As Marcus and Vanessa are led away, Elena feels a weight lift from her shoulders that she's been carrying since the terrifying night on the pier. Sophie is safe. Adrian's company is protected. And somehow, impossibly, their love has survived the attempt to weaponize it against them. Later that night, back in the penthouse that has become their sanctuary, Adrian and Elena finally have their first completely honest conversation. The city sparkles below them like scattered diamonds, beautiful and indifferent to the small human dramas that play out in its shadows. "I can't believe you faced them alone," Adrian says, his arms wrapped around Elena as they stand at the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park. Elena leans back against his chest, feeling safe for the first time in weeks. "I wasn't alone. I had your love, even when I thought I was about to lose it forever. That gave me strength I didn't know I possessed." Adrian turns her in his arms, his hands framing her face with infinite gentleness. "Elena, I need you to know something. The contract we signed, I'm tearing it up. It's null and void, meaningless. If you stay with me, it has to be because you want to be here, not because of legal obligations or financial arrangements." Elena smiles through tears that are finally joyful instead of desperate. "Where else would I be? You're my home now, Adrian. You and Sophie and the life we're going to build together." 1 month later, on a crisp autumn morning that makes Manhattan look like a painting, Elena and Adrian stand in a small chapel surrounded by the people who matter most. This time, there are no cameras except the ones held by friends. No society reporters, no business associates calculating advantages, no enemies plotting in shadows. Sophie, healthy and radiant, serves as Elena's maid of honor. Her recovery has been nothing short of miraculous, and she glows with the kind of happiness that comes from being genuinely loved by people who would move mountains to protect her future. Elena wears her grandmother's wedding dress, a simple creation of ivory silk and antique lace that cost nothing but means everything. Adrian wears his father's vintage tuxedo, slightly altered to fit his broader shoulders, but carrying the weight of family history and new beginnings. "You know," Sophie whispers as she adjusts Elena's veil, "Mom and Dad would have loved him. They always said you deserved someone who would fight dragons for you." Elena squeezes her sister's hand, thinking of the dragons they've already faced together, and won. "I think you're right." The ceremony is everything their first wedding wasn't: intimate, genuine, witnessed by people who love them rather than people who want to use them. When the minister asks if anyone objects to this union, the silence is complete and peaceful. "Do you, Adrian, take Elena to be your wife, to have and to hold, in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, in good times and bad, for as long as you both shall live?" Adrian's voice is steady, certain, filled with a happiness that transforms his entire being. "I do. I absolutely, completely, eternally do." "Do you, Elena, take Adrian to be your husband, to love and to hold, to support and to cherish, from this day forward until death do you part?" Elena looks into the storm cloud eyes that have become her home, sees the future they're going to build together reflected in their depths. "I do. Forever and always and in every life that comes after this one." This kiss is different from their first, different even from the passionate declaration at the gala. It's not performance, not obligation, not even desire. It's pure love, witnessed by the people who matter most, sanctified by truth instead of hidden by lies. 1 year later, Elena sits in the penthouse nursery, morning sunlight streaming through windows that overlook the city where their love story began. In her arms, their newborn daughter sleeps peacefully, tiny fingers curled around Elena's thumb with the unconscious trust that defines love at its purest. Adrian enters quietly, still exhausted from a late board meeting but immediately transformed by the sight of his family. Success in business means nothing compared to the wealth he holds in this room: a wife who chose love over safety, a daughter who carries the promise of tomorrow, and a future built on foundations strong enough to weather any storm. "How are my girls?" he asks, settling into the rocking chair beside Elena's. Perfect, Elena replies, adjusting their daughter's blanket with the careful precision of new motherhood. Sophie called earlier. She got accepted to Harvard Medical School with a full scholarship. Adrian's smile could power entire cities. Dr. Sophie Hart. Your parents would be incredibly proud of both of you. Elena looks around the nursery they've created together. Soft yellows and greens, family photographs spanning generations, a mobile of stars that casts gentle shadows on the walls. They would be proud of all of us. We kept the promise. Adrian reaches for Elena's free hand, their wedding rings catching the morning light. What promise? Elena's eyes shine with the kind of contentment that comes from battles fought and won, from love that survived every attempt to destroy it. That love is worth fighting for. That family is worth everything. That sometimes the most beautiful things in life come from the most impossible circumstances. Their daughter stirs in Elena's arms, making the soft sounds that babies use to announce their presence to a world that doesn't yet know how extraordinary they're going to be. Elena looks down at this perfect creation born of imperfect love, this living proof that contracts can be broken, but true commitment lasts forever. You know what the best part is? Elena continues, her voice soft with wonder. We started with a contract that was supposed to protect us from getting hurt. But it turns out, the real protection comes from being brave enough to love someone completely, even when it's terrifying. Adrian leans over to kiss the top of their daughter's head, breathing in that sweet new baby scent that makes everything else in the world seem insignificant by comparison. What are we going to name her? Elena smiles, looking down at the tiny face that somehow manages to combine Adrian's strong jawline with her own gentle eyes. I was thinking. Hope. Hope Knight. Adrian's eyes fill with tears he doesn't bother to hide. Hope. Because that's what you gave me when I thought I was too broken to love anyone again. Elena shifts their daughter so Adrian can hold her, watches his face transform as Hope wraps her impossibly small fingers around his thumb. This man who commands boardrooms and builds empires becomes utterly undone by 20 inches of perfect humanity, who has no idea she's already conquered the most powerful person in her world. She's going to be so loved, Elena says, watching Adrian whisper secrets to their daughter about the adventures they're going to have together. By us, by Sophie, by all the family we're going to build around her. Adrian looks up at Elena, this woman who walked into his life during his darkest hour and somehow made everything light again. Do you think she'll understand someday? About how we started, what we went through to get here. Elena considers the question, thinking about the story they'll tell their daughter when she's old enough to understand concepts like sacrifice and courage and love that conquers every obstacle placed in its path. I think she'll understand that the best love stories aren't the ones that start perfectly, Elena says finally. They're the ones where people choose each other again and again, even when it's difficult, even when it's scary, even when the whole world seems determined to tear them apart. Hope makes a soft sound that might be agreement or might just be gas, but both her parents choose to interpret it as approval of their origin story. Outside the nursery windows, Manhattan hums with its eternal energy. Millions of people pursuing their own dreams of love and success and happiness that sometimes feels just out of reach. Somewhere in the city, other couples are meeting for the first time in hospital waiting rooms and coffee shops and corporate elevators, beginning their own journeys toward the kind of love that changes everything. Some love stories are written in the stars, predetermined by forces greater than human understanding. But Elena and Adrian's love was written in choice. The choice to trust when trust seemed impossible, to hope when hope seemed foolish, to fight when fighting seemed useless. Their contract marriage was supposed to last 90 days, a temporary arrangement that would solve immediate problems and then dissolve as cleanly as sugar in water. Instead, it became the foundation for a love that will span decades, a partnership that will weather every storm, a family that will carry their story forward into generations yet unborn. Adrian Knight learned that the most valuable acquisition of his life wasn't a company or a merger or a stock portfolio. It was a heart brave enough to love him exactly as he was while believing he could become something better. Elena Hart learned that sometimes the greatest risks bring the greatest rewards, that stepping into the unknown with someone you trust can lead to destinations more beautiful than any you dared imagine. What started as a business arrangement became the greatest love story of their lives, proof that when love decides to break every contract designed to contain it, it writes something infinitely better in its place. It writes forever. Elena chose love over security, truth over safety, and courage over fear. In the end, she discovered that the greatest contract isn't written on paper with lawyers' signatures and legal seals. It's written on the human heart with promises that grow stronger rather than weaker with time. Do you think they made the right choice? Would you have had the courage to risk everything for love, to stand up in front of 1,000 people and declare that your heart matters more than your safety? The most beautiful love stories are the ones where people choose each other not because it's easy, but because it's worth it. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone you love, because every great love story deserves to inspire another. The world needs more Elena and Adrians, more people brave enough to believe that love really can conquer all, more hearts willing to write their own happily ever after even when the odds seem impossible. Because somewhere out there, your own love story is waiting to be written. And who knows? It might just start with the most unexpected contract of all, the decision to open your heart to possibilities you never saw coming.